The video game industry is massive. In 2020, the reported global video game revenues were 179.7 billion. It was a bigger moneymaker than the global movie and North American sports industries combined. Do you see where video games are going and why they're so interesting for me as an investor? It's my thesis that in 20 years, there will be kids who are professional esport athletes making more than LeBron James. Video gaming continues to grow at incredible paces, and this is before blockchain takes it to a much higher level. Blockchain introduces ownership in gaming items, and ownership in gaming items will supercharge the revenues that come into gaming. It will allow businesses to be formed within gaming metaverses and gaming environments, and capital to flow like has never before been seen in video games. One of the top blockchain games coming to the market, which is currently in a private beta, is Illuvium. One of the top people keeping tabs on Illuvium is our guest today, Scoriox, who has his own YouTube channel, which I strongly recommend for all of you, joins us in a minute to talk about Illuvium and the blockchain gaming space in general. Welcome to the Crypto Rain channel. I'm your host, Jay Rain. And if you like money and crypto and you're looking for a seasoned investor's take on the crypto market, join the Rainmaker family. Do note, I'm not your financial advisor. I'm not even a financial advisor. I'm a crypto investor myself. We do want to thank our Patreon members. We have a private Discord that only our Patreon members get access to. Now make it rain on that like button and strap in for the show and help me welcome Scoriox to the channel.
Hey, how's it going, man? It's great to be here.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate it. You've been diving deep into blockchain gaming and one of the top blockchain games coming. But for those that haven't followed your channel yet, could you give us a little bit of your story about what attracted you into crypto? Like, what was your origin story of how you found crypto and why you started following it?
So I've been following crypto for a very, very long time. I bought like a tiny bit of Ethereum when I was like 19 or whatever on some website. But this was like, I didn't have any money. I was like in high school or whatever, or maybe it was before 19 or whatever. I bought Ethereum a very long time. And then for some reason, about 3 to 4 years ago, I checked back in and I'm like, okay, what's crypto doing nowadays? And that's because in my thesis at university, I started delving deeper into blockchain because I felt like blockchain could help the project that I was looking into, which was essentially digital collectibles and their link to the physical realm. So physical and digital link, and how blockchain could really assist that in proving authenticity, because collectibles are very important due to their scarcity and all the rest of it. And it's very hard to prove authenticity on physical products. But with the blockchain, it's all provable, it's all decentralized and everything. So linking the two together was really important. And once I started delving deeper into blockchain technology, I then decided, let's get more involved with crypto. I've always wanted to. I love the technology. I think it's fantastic. Let's do it. And I started buying a couple tokens here and there. Over diversified, mind you, but I started buying a few tokens. I'm not a particularly good investor. I've improved a lot since then, but yeah, still long ways to go.
Yeah, we're always bad before we're good whenever we're new at anything, right? And sometimes people don't give themselves room to become good. They think they're supposed to come in and be great right away, which rarely happens, right? Every person who becomes an investor, they learn some lessons the hard way. They can shorten their learning curve by learning from people who have already paid the price. So you came in because of the project having to do with digital collectibles or tracking on the blockchain for physical collectibles. That's really interesting. So where did the journey take you from there?
So I just kept investing in crypto projects, for the most part, mid to large cap projects. And then eventually I went, and then we had that big crash, right? I think I'd found Illuvium before then, but I don't know if I'd invested. We had some of those major crashes and the prices started going up. And I'm like, look, we're probably going to crash again at some point. Nothing goes up forever. I want to try and find projects where I feel like they're bear market resistant. Now, I'm not afraid of the bear market, so to speak, and I don't mind if my investments go up and down over time and all the rest of it. That's just the nature of investing. But I felt like if I could find a project that was resistant to it, or it had not much of an impact on the project's success, then that project would hopefully not go to zero at a bare minimum, and or would help make me money. The other side of that was during recessions and things like that, which I was seeing a lot of stuff thrown around about. During recessions, dividend stocks are typically pretty good. I think my father even taught me that, but I saw that a lot online. The dividend stocks are quite well. I'm like, okay, well, I not really have an interest in stocks. What's the equivalent for dividend crypto investments? And then by that extension, I said, okay, I think real yield is not necessarily the next bull run. I still believe it could be. I think real yield is the sort of project that I want to invest in because they have real income coming from somewhere. I've seen what's happened with Axie Infinity. It's a Ponzi scheme. I mean, most things in life are, but Axie Infinity in particular, I want to make sure that I know where the yield is coming from so that I am not the yield. By that extension, I found Illuvium primarily because of its RevDiz mechanic, where 100% of the revenues, or at least revenues minus the cost, are going to go back to staking token holders. And I thought, okay, this is a really interesting mechanism. And I mean, games can make a lot of money. I'm no fool. You know that already. You said it at the start of this. Games can make a lot of money. So if 100% is going back to people like me, I want a part of that 100%, right? So then I started getting deeper into Illuvium and deciding if this was kind of the thing I was looking for. And after I looked at all the criteria and how I thought it might work looking into the future, and many who have seen my videos know that I've speculated a lot on kind of that zone of things where I think things could lead into the future. And I thought, yeah, I think Illuvium is the right fit for me. Obviously, I'm a big Pokemon fan, so it fit kind of that bill as well. I really enjoy TFT, but more specifically, I enjoy strategy games. So that also fit into it quite well. And I felt like, I had all the elements of games that I really, really love. They were building an IP I thought I could really get behind. And they were giving all the money back to stakers. And I felt like that was a really novel idea. And not only that, but it makes the token quite bear market resistant in the sense that even during a recession, gamers are still gaming. Hopefully, I mean we don't know for sure what's going to happen in the future, but if that thesis holds true, then ILV seems like a really great investment.
So that's interesting. Out of all the different things you were looking at, you came to Illuvium because the revenue distribution, kind of like a dividend stock, something that you could get passive income. So you could invest money in there and it would continue to pay out. And if it did really well, the investment size would grow tremendously. So those passive returns could be much more than what you put in to begin with, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, like the idea when you run through the numbers is one of two things happens. Now, if we assume Illuvium is successful, that's the big caveat, but that's the caveat for pretty much any crypto project.
Absolutely.
If Illuvium is successful, one of two things happens. The token price doesn't really go anywhere, but you're getting passive yield from it, hopefully a significant amount, or people find the project and they're seeing the passive yield and then they invest lots into the token and the token like goes up a lot, right? And you're getting a little bit less in passive yield in terms of the compounding effect and things like that, but the token price went up. So in theory, it's a win-win, but obviously we have no guarantee of any of that, and this is not financial advice.
And why wouldn't it be that the token price goes up and the yield ends up being exceptional?
Well, I like to look at the yield in a percentage basis. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
So the yield would be the same amount, but if the token price goes up, you're not getting many extra tokens, and the compounding effect becomes a lot weaker in a sense, right? Because
as far as more tokens.
Yeah, for those that aren't aware of how it works, is basically the more tokens you have, the higher percentage of the overall pool you have. So if the token price is low as you're gaining more tokens, then you would be slowly getting a larger chunk of that pool, and your passive income would be increasing pretty quickly. I mean, you have to assume at that point the token price would be going up. But if the token price went up really fast, then you wouldn't be getting that many tokens. You'd be getting the same dollar amount, but you wouldn't really be increasing your percentage returns over time as much, if that makes sense.
Yes. And so you followed a little bit what happened to Axie. How closely did you follow that?
I came into it at the peak. I never bought any Axies or anything because they were like $1,000 or $2,000 or whatever. I was looking at getting into it. I saw they were $1,000 or $2,000. I'm like, okay, I'm priced out. It's hard. Sometimes I've been priced out and gone in anyways. Thankfully, this was not one of those times. I would have been coming in right at the peak. So thankfully I stopped myself. I'm like, okay, well, I know this is a Ponzi scheme. Do I try and write out the last little bit of it or not? It was clear that the printing of SLP was really ridiculous, and there's just no other way to slice it.
And for those that haven't followed, Axie Infinity was the first blockchain game that really proved a few things. First of all, it launched in 2018. They did their Origin Axie sale where they sold, I forget, like 10,000 Axies. If you were really lucky, you got a Mystic part. There's like 6 parts on each Axie. If you got a Mystic part, those ones did really good. The Origin Axies, all of them end up doing good, but only after they did bad for about 2 years. In January of 2019, they launched a land sale, which was very interesting to me. I thought, land for a video game that's going to be on the blockchain, and I think this could be something. So I put about $4,100 into it. For 2 years, it did almost nothing. It actually went down, so I can't say it didn't do anything. It didn't do anything positive. It went down to about a third of the value of what I put in, maybe even lower. And then it took off absolutely, and I sold it 100x, but it did 3,000x from the point that I bought, really kind of showing that, gosh, there's interest in this type of thing, this type of ownership that you can make, I guess, capture the value of the time or the investment that you're putting into a game, which is really what's new. Did you ever play the game itself?
No. I watched lots of videos on it. I know it was pretty basic gacha-y sort of thing. Kind of reminded me of Raid Shadow Legends a little bit in gameplay, but no, I didn't really play it.
Yeah, basic. And I tried to play it long enough to earn enough Smooth Love Potion to breed ones that had never bred before. So the lowest threshold, I got halfway there and I wanted to claw my eyes out, and I, quit because it's not my game style and it was so boring to me. But given that, because it introduced ownership and that you could capture some value from the time that you put in, it became the 10th highest played game in the world, even though it has very basic model, basic gameplay. And what I think it showed is when you introduce ownership of assets and that there's a value to these that you can trade and resell them, that has real value. Even though the game, the playability of it isn't anywhere near what the other top 9 games were, and yet it reached the 10th highest played game in the world for a short period of time, which is incredible. And what's so interesting and genius about their model that the Axie team did was after their initial Axie sale, and then they did like Mio sale or something, I don't know. I think it was in Japan or something, and Mio 2s. So they sold off some Axies to raise some funds to build it, and then they did a land sale. They made revenues off of just the transactions that happened in the smart contracts. So as people traded, they made a 4.25% trading fee, but they didn't take any other revenues from people in the game. Like they didn't sell Smooth Love Potion or anything. And yet with just that little transaction tax and getting out of the way and let players exchange value between each other, they made billions, which is crazy. And it proves another model, which is like you don't have to do all these sales to your people all the time. In fact, if you can create a way that you can allow people within the game to create the value and then sell it to other people and just make a small transaction fee, you really incentivize all kinds of people to come into the game. People who may not even normally be gamers, because there were a lot of people playing Axie Infinity who weren't gamers. Why? Because it was like a job to them, right? Many in the Philippines, other parts of Asia that are really poor, they could play the game and average $2 an hour versus a job at a factory where they might lose a finger or an arm. They're playing a game for $2 an hour, about the same wage that they would have made at the factory.
Yeah, I mean, I think even more than what they would have made at the factory from what I understand.
Yeah, and what it showed is that this model, even though the gameplay of Axie is so basic, Axie still makes a ton of money, and this idea is going to change gaming for forever at a time where more money is going to come into gaming anyway. But what blockchain allows is ownership into it, which ownership of assets. And so I think that we'll see kind of like what you're looking for is revenues being able to be made on a passive basis because of assets owned in a game. In Illuvium, they have a revenue distribution on the token. Some other games might have some kind of land that maybe you get a percentage of what's earned on your land, and you literally are making passive income from ownership of land, fake land in a video game, right?
Yeah, and I think it goes even deeper than that. I think the creator economy is really starting to boom, and blockchain gaming is going to add to that even more. There are some blockchain games out there that are going to do a really interesting revenue sharing model with creator created assets, and that's why I think Sandbox is quite an interesting project, but they didn't do a very good job with it. I know some other projects that have done a pretty good job, but what this comes down to is similar to that kind of like Fortnite builder that they've built now. In Fortnite, they've done some partnership with Unreal Engine, and you can download the Unreal Engine and this special tool. Now you can build your own Fortnite maps, make other games, and so on and so forth. Now, I think they're actually adding some of these sharing models into their systems, even though they're not Web3. But what I imagine is in a lot of Web3 games, you're going to have similar things where, for example, if Illuvia managed to make the tools that would make it easy for you to build your own alluvial. Now, anyone could build that alluvial, and now maybe they take a 1% royalty on other people buying that alluvial or capturing it or whatever. I don't know what it would look like, but these sorts of creator economy systems are going to be really, really interesting blockchain gaming, because it means the more people that add to a game and its success, and they're also getting a kickback for their hard work, for their design, for their skills, and all the rest of it. I don't know if you ever played StarCraft 2, but they had this arcade system inside it where basically there were people that made hundreds and hundreds of different game modes and different games entirely in a grand sense. Even things like campaigns and single player modes and things like that. Those sorts of people, I think, are the ones that have been left behind a little bit. A lot of them made their own revenue in their own ways. But it's those sorts of systems that keep games, like give games longevity. You can't make longevity in a game without community built support, right? That's why GTA 5 is so successful. That's why Minecraft still exists. You can't have a game last 10 years without community input, right? And so rewarding those community members using the blockchain is going to be really powerful and make some of the best gaming experiences we've ever seen in our lives. And that's actually what the metaverse is. The metaverse is community created. You can't build a metaverse with one studio or one founder or one company. That's not how metaverses work. A metaverse is going to be community built, and the blockchain enables that like we've never seen before.
Yeah, absolutely. In 2015, I had a conversation with my uncle, and my uncle was in charge of, like in the computer revolution, the PC revolution from like mainframe to PCs. He was a top person at one of the top companies in that field. He was their lead architect or whatever, and brilliant. But you know, a lot of brilliant people sometimes have a hard time like talking to people that aren't familiar with what they're doing and explain it in a simple way. He was also brilliant in that he could do that. And I had a few hours with him in 2015, and he was talking to me about gaming, video gaming. I don't know that he's played a lot of video games in his life, but he said in the future there's going to be a game where they create this system that allows other companies to come and build items in their game. He said it might be a space game, it might be like a fantasy game, but it'll be something where the business kind of has this overall architecture, but then other businesses can come inside and say manufacture weapons or whatever. and they get a percentage of the revenue from that, and they incentivize it right so that other businesses can make good revenues coming in and building stuff in their games, which is exactly what you're describing and where gaming is going and why blockchain is going to really dominate the future. Now, there's a couple ways this could go. First of all, they could do it without the blockchain. The downside of that is that, do you really have true ownership if at any time they can lock your account, and then you can, even if they allow you to trade for real money, like CSGO, Counter-Strike Go right now is doing that, right? Where you can trade these items in the boxes, and some of the knives have a value for like $10,000 or $12,000, and you can trade for it. But if you get your account locked, so you don't have true ownership, you're kind of leasing the items. And I think some games, a lot of the AAA level games will go there first. The blockchain games, a lot of them are going more towards like true NFTs that you can send out of your wallet. And therefore you do have true ownership of them, because even if you violate the terms of service of the game, you still have your wallet. You still own those items and they can't take them away from you, which I think once gamers really get a feel for, and it also gives asset creators and investment arms of businesses a reason to come into it, right? Because if you're thinking about a business, it's like, okay, we're going to invest $5 million building a business within your game. But if we have a falling out, you can shut off our access to everything and we no longer get revenue distribution from the items that we created. No. But then you create on the blockchain where they're created as NFTs and they get perpetual revenues on those items, and it's set up in a way, then they're going to make those investments, right?
I definitely, yeah. I never really thought about the business side of things, them getting involved with games and stuff like that. I definitely recognize that gamers haven't realized that distinction yet. And there's probably a few other distinctions as well. I've seen some people throw around that, well, you don't really need to do Web3 to do marketplaces and sellable assets and things like that. But the restriction there is that if someone releases a sequel, they don't have any obligation. That's one of the big ones for me. For example, if you have CSGO and CSGO 2, I still can't believe CSGO 2, they were honest and smart enough to make the decision where they made everything port over. And that made me really, really happy. So I think Counter-Strike has actually been pioneering this entire theory in this entire space longer than any other game. Even though they're not Web3, I highly respect them for that. But you're right, there are most games that don't feel obliged to do those sorts of systems. And then they decide when they go from number one to the sequel, they can just create all these new assets, all these new, and a lot of the time they're reusing models as well. That's the one that shits me the most, is they're reusing the actual like 3D models or textures or whatever, and then they're selling it to you twice. And that's the one that really gets me. And technically the blockchain might not solve that, because it would still be up to the developer to choose if those older items would work on this game. But I definitely think the more games start doing that and start enabling those features, then most of the games will be forced to move on to that as gamers start to realize the distinction here, right? I think business is a really good thing. If they really do start getting involved so heavily, gamers will have no choice.
Exactly. It'll be a free market where they don't have to do that. But if they don't, they're not going to be competitive, because all the other projects do that. And consumers will learn to demand that. Oh, you want me to come in and buy, a game famous for resetting all your items is Call of Duty, right? So Call of Duty, you get all your items reset. Oh, yeah, the new one comes out and you have to re-grind through things. And I guess they haven't done that so much with the last few years. But prior to that, every time it essentially reset everything. So in the future, it's interesting what this looks like, because I do remember a conversation. So Axie Infinity, I was an early investor. I sold at 100x. Shortly after selling, I went to the Bitcoin conference in 2021. I still had some items that were on the market, some Axies that I had gotten for free that I had up for sale for like 1,000, 1,500 in some cases, and they were selling. And I went to the Bitcoin conference. I met this guy and he had put together a fund, raised $2 million to straight up buy land in Axie Infinity. Now, at the time, land was about 50,000, so it hadn't fully peaked yet. But we're talking about the Mystic plots, which is what I bought the most of, is the Mystic plot. So I tracked their price closer than the other plots. The Mystic plots peaked at 70 to 120,000, and I don't know whether he sold, but he had put together a fund of $2 million to first buy some teams of Axies that then he was managing people who would use those Axies to earn Smooth Love Potion. But secondly, he's telling me, he's like, I think the greatest investment in all of crypto right now is the land. You should buy some Axie land. I was like, well, I just finished selling all mine. I mean, I bought it for really cheap back in 2019, and I think the prices are really high right now. And he's like, no, you don't get it. This is going to be the future. And he may not have been wrong with that, but definitely his timing was terrible, right? Because he spent 50 grand. They went up to 70 grand, and now they're, last I checked, they held up pretty well, that they've been 10 to 12,000 last I checked, which is still really high and not big of a retracement. And Axie Infinity as a game continues to make amazing revenues, even though their gameplay is way down from the peak. And so what's interesting is how it brought in external dollars by complete non-video game players, because now there were business components to it. And
yeah, I mean, I think
Axie
it's
really
interesting.
proved that model.
I think it's interesting because regulation hasn't quite come to crypto, and there have been a lot of advancements the past week or two, let me tell you that much. So, but I think it's interesting that NFTs did open up some more doors for larger investors, because they're so different to crypto tokens, which many see as securities and so on and so forth. Now, I'm not a lawyer. I don't understand any of that stuff. Like, I'm trying to learn it, but I'm having a lot of trouble. But I would expect that a lot of these gaming assets can be categorized quite differently to a lot of people. And in certain countries in the world, it might present as a business opportunity that makes a lot more sense to a lot more people. And I think that's quite an interesting side of that.
Yeah, imagine within a game, right, where you could invest in these assets. Because one of the challenges with blockchain gaming is sometimes the players don't have money to buy the assets required that unlock something. But if they partner with an investor, front some money, and they split the extra revenues that the player can make by utilizing those items, then it creates a win-win. And I think with blockchain and true ownership, you're going to see more things like that. And like, what's interesting is one of the MMOs during the last bear markets get really boring. So it's a really good time to dig into what's happening with gaming. And that was my thought the last bear market, right? That's why I had my eye on Axie Infinity and another game that launched back then, which is Gods Unchained. And the creators of Gods Unchained created the Immutable X blockchain because ETH became so expensive to work with that you couldn't trade a $5 card and pay a $70 transaction fee. They had to, create their own chain to then transact on. So that's how Immutable X came about. But those were some of the first blockchain games that launched. Gods Unchained, which has done well, and Axie Infinity, which has done extremely well. But I was tracking blockchain gaming, and I thought, I'm going to go see where MMOs and other games are. And so I played a bunch of games during there. And one of the ones I played was EVE Online, which I had played way back in 2003. And it's still around today, 20 years later. The amount of updates they've made is tremendous. And I did hear a rumor that they're going to go to blockchain assets. But what's interesting is they allow corporations within the game. And so I joined one of the bigger corporations because you can earn more money. You have access to really unsafe spaces unless you're part of basically a big group like that. And you can utilize your time more effectively. But what's interesting is they've shut off all the avenues to be able to capture the value for your items, right? So back in 2003, I made money playing this game because you could sell the items in-game on eBay to someone else, and then you could just escrow them inside the game. You just need their player name, and you could set up an escrow for them. And so you could receive real money, give them the item in-game, and wow, it was amazing. And in like 2004, they shut that off. The rumor is because one of the corporations one of the members stole all of their corporate assets, and they wanted, the makers of EVE Online to roll back those transactions. And they said, well, he didn't hack your hangars. You gave him access to those hangars. Yeah, but the value of those is $2 million, and he stole them. And unless you reverse the transaction, we're going to sue you for the $2 million we lost. And they said, well, there's no value to those because they're just ones and zeros in the game. And they said, no, there's real value and we can prove it. And they said, oh, yeah. They reached out to eBay and they shut off the ability to transact on eBay to ensure that there was no value to those items. Where I'm getting at with this is in 2019, I'm playing the game. I hear rumors that some of the corporations sell some of their assets for real money, and they just use some backdoor channels, and that they make huge amounts of money, even having to transact them at huge discounts because of, if you get caught, you get your account shut off and the other person gets their account shut off, etc., right? Because you're violating the terms of service. Imagine the amount of revenues for big corporations or guilds like that in an MMO that is successful, where those kind of transactions are not only like safe to do, they're endorsed by the game and they want you to make those transactions. The amount of revenues flowing to people who run big guilds and big corporations and stuff in successful MMOs will be enormous. That you'll have people making $1 million a year running a guild or a corporation in a video game.
I think, yeah, I mean, I have a similar experience where I used to play Guild Wars 2, and all I used to do was flip their in-game stock exchange. I got really bored of the MMO side of things. Like, I enjoy it, but I don't enjoy quests where you have to kill 20 of something or whatever. It just bores the crap out of me.
Yeah.
So I started flipping the in-game stock exchange and looking at all the analytics on the websites and things like that. You know me, I love my numbers. But yeah, no, I really enjoy playing that side of the game, but I like the idea. I think MMO is quite an interesting, develops quite interesting into blockchain in particular because it tries to mimic real life in a lot of ways. And the beauty of blockchain is that it enables free markets in the digital space. It enables all these real life aspects that we have and all these real life asset ownership, free markets, money, all the rest of it. And it enables those things in the digital space and more importantly in gaming. Right. So what you get now is you get a game genre, let's say an MMO that tries to mimic some of those real life aspects. And now you give them some real value and real strengths to them. And you get some really interesting gameplay loops. Like I'm talking gameplay purely here. Like people would really enjoy just doing that. Okay. Now there's certain risks that come with it. People are now risking real money, which is probably a problem. But at the same time, in the past, any money they were spending on a video game was locked up forever, and there was nothing else they could do with it. Even things like World of Warcraft, people sell in-game gold. Now, sometimes they can get that gold for free or something, or they can buy it at a discount. I have no idea why they do it, but they can sell in-game gold to give other people discounts. So these markets already exist. It's just blockchain would enable it, and as an added benefit, the game itself would get some of that revenue, right? So everybody wins.
Yeah, everybody wins. And one of the reasons back in 2003, which World of Warcraft was really taking off, funny enough, you were talking about creator economies, right? World of Warcraft are one of the biggest games today is called Dota 2, which came out from Warcraft 3 like mod that somebody made, a game loop that somebody made using their creative tools, right? And now is one of the biggest games in the world because of that idea. So World of Warcraft was taking off and gold was being transacted, and Blizzard went every which way they could to shut off anybody selling that. And what I read this article back then about why they were so concerned about that is they were concerned about the IMF coming in and deeming them to have made a currency. You're not a country. You don't have the right to make a currency, and we feel you created a currency, so we're going to sue you for $2 billion, which, Blizzard at the time could not have sustained, and it would have crippled them. And so they were concerned about making sure it had no value, and probably that's the story they were giving. part of the reason is the only way for you to get items in the game is to buy them from them or earn it by playing and grinding all that time, rather than buying it from some player that had earned it. So they were closing all the doors for money to be transacted from the outside to anybody else except for them. And that was the reason that they were giving is, we don't want to be deemed as having currency. But now you can just make whatever you have transactable with ETH. Axie Infinity just used ETH, right? Like it was all transacted in ETH and then wrapped ETH once they launched the IMX, or not IMX, their own blockchain, the Ronin blockchain. And they just took a transaction feed to make revenues themselves and allowed people just to exchange value amongst themselves. And they just took a little transaction fee.
Well, I think you're right. Ethereum and just existing blockchains and existing cryptocurrency has certainly paved the way for a lot of this. Like, you're right. There's so much stuff you've got to do if you're creating your own currency, that if you could start to use other people's digital currency and it's as decentralized as you can get, Bitcoin's the most decentralized, Ethereum's okay, and it has its own decentralization, but you can start to use those decentralized currencies and now everybody wins, right? Like, you can start to use those currencies without building your own and without having to deal with all those regulators and things. Now, you probably have your own stuff you have to deal with, but as regulation continues to grow, gaming is going to blow up. I definitely think gaming is going to blow up as it becomes easier for people to integrate blockchain into their games without fear of getting shut down by the government or whatever it might be.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to where it can go. We're still in the very early days. And in 2019, it was the early days when I would try to have these discussions with people. It was like, nobody got it, right? When I'd have these discussions with people, I mean, my own wife, wait, you spent $4,100 on fake land for a video game? What in the world are you doing, right? And it was only later that she still doesn't get it, but she's like, oh, wow, okay, that worked out, but where this is going is amazing, and it's exciting to me. I've always liked video games. I've always liked that you can create game loops that are fun and exciting for people as an escape. What's interesting is it will introduce a business side that's never been there, and we see a little bit of that with Ready Player One, right? Ready Player One, the book, and then you have businesses that like work within it. Of course, the bad business has got too much power over the politicians and everything. And, if somebody doesn't pay their bills, they come and capture them and make them grind out money in the game and do whatever. But there will be able to be businesses within the game. Hopefully none of them ever get so powerful that they own all the politicians and can enslave people who are behind on their payments. But I think we'll see business revenues grow, and this game economy will draw. So it'll become so much bigger because of the investment side that's never really been able to be in it before.
I definitely think we get to something like that, but I don't think we get as dystopian. What's important to note is that gaming really only gets as big as the entertainment industry can, and it's got to have some sort of maximum weight here, right, in the overall economy, because you can't eat entertainment, you can't drink entertainment, you can't live in entertainment. Although I think that's what Ready Player One tries to explore, is like, entertainment is forced to become every single part of your life that isn't keeping you alive, right? And I think that's valuable, because in that sense, then if it takes up 80% of the day's hours, then it has 80% of the overall economy. And that's 80% of the income and things. And then you can easily make jobs in that space, and you can businesses, jobs, different sort of economies, because it's 80% of everyone's time. Now, I don't think we ever go that dystopian, to be quite frank, but entertainment value will grow over time as we run out of space, or we run out of things to do, or let's say AI takes over and now none of us have jobs and we're all full leisure, right? We're all lying back doing nothing because the AI is doing all the heavy lifting for us. What are we going to do all day? We're going to soak up entertainment. I think blockchain gaming and gaming in general is definitely going to be one of those larger avenues. And as you said at the start of this video, gaming revenue is outpacing, I think, a lot of the other entertainment avenues in terms of growth. At least it doesn't have more revenue, but in terms of growth, it is growing faster than them. Why that is hard to say. I definitely think as the generations get older, gaming always appeals to younger audiences, and so as it gets older, more and more people are getting involved. But yeah, there's a lot of different factors.
Yeah. Now, would you agree that it's possible that in 20 years, some of the top athletes are esports athletes, video game players, making more than top American basketball players?
Well, I think the equation there is obnoxiously simple, right? At the moment, esports is actually doing really, really poorly. A lot of esports teams are shutting down. There's just not enough money in it. Now, why isn't there enough money in it? My best guess would be not enough people are watching it. And in my experience, all my best friends and stuff are gamers. I mean, they watch occasionally, but they're not watching religiously like we watch the AFL over here in Australia. No one's watching it yet. Now, if that ever shifted, it's without a doubt, right? So if more people are watching esports than are watching basketball, or the NBA in this case, then esports players, no matter their age, would definitely be earning a lot more than LeBron James would. And I think that's really the simplicity of the equation. Now, do we ever think people will be watching esports that frequently? I think esports has a very different level of engagement. In my experience, and from what I've seen, esports is really only watched by those that really understand the game itself. So if you've played League yourself and you really understand the ins and outs of League, you're the person that's most likely to watch esports and or most likely to enjoy it the most. Now, I've heard and I've talked to my brother, he's much more into this sort of stuff than I am. And he says that it's not really the case anymore. There are lots of casual viewers in esports. And as that casual viewing goes up, and as games become easier and easier to understand, as the generations become more accustomed to gaming in general, then the viewership could definitely grow. But what that looks like is going to be interesting. And I think if we do start to enter the virtual reality and the metaverse and stuff even more, virtual reality is going to make watching those things much more of an experience than it currently is. Currently, you can go to a basketball game, you can meet the players, you can watch them all out on the court, and that's an experience in itself. Esports doesn't have that yet. You can go to kind of the stadium and they're all sitting on a computer. It's exactly the same experience, right? Exactly the same experience as watching it on your screen at home or on your TV. Okay, there's literally zero difference. Very different for something like the NBA, AFL, hockey, whatever you want to say. As virtual reality starts to come into the mix, it starts to get more interesting. For example, I imagine a stadium built around an Illuvium battle board, and since you're in virtual reality, you're watching the Illuvials fight, and it looks like they're there in front of you. That's an experience we don't currently have in gaming, and we don't currently have in esports. And if we get to that level where this experience is starting to become on par with watching a basketball game, the viewership starts to shift really quickly, and also you have a reason to charge people tickets. You don't really have that at the moment. It's pretty easy to jump onto some stream, right? So the only revenue they can make is from advertising. If you start to shift that and you enable revenue generation from ticket sales, now you have something that makes money.
Well, I think the revenue from ads can be huge and will be huge, kind of like when the exclusive agreements come out down the road with some of the top esports. Like, this has really kind of come about. We're still early days in the esports. I remember I got into Dota 2. Some friends recommended it back in 2012. And so I was like, oh, okay, well, it's free anyway. And so I started playing Dota 2, which has the highest paid international event of anything in gaming. I think the prize pool has grown to like 15 or 20 million now. Though I don't tune in, like sometimes I've watched a few of the games and a few of the teams, but I don't watch it all the time. If I happen to come across, I'll watch some of the matches as they happen. What's fascinating to me is how big the prize pools have gotten. It started with 1 million or something. One of the first ones way back then, I was like, wow, $1 million, that's a lot. And now it's like 15 to 20 million for a team of 5. And so literally from that one tournament, the team that wins, they end up making like millions of dollars per player. And I don't know what their split is with their franchise and the coach and everything, but it's pretty good revenues. And the average age of those top pro players is between 13 and 21. Occasionally there'll be like a 24-year-old or something, but fascinating to see the evolution of that. And it's still early days, right? There used to be a time that baseball players didn't make hardly anything, right? Back in Babe Ruth's days, I think Babe Ruth made a lot of money, but most of the pro players back then didn't make hardly anything.
I think it's interesting, the prize pools and the ages of the different players, because gaming is so different. From what I understand is your reflexes can start to go at around 2021, and you can't compete with those really high-paced players. And in that sense, then in a physical sport like basketball or rugby or whatever you want to say, your physical appearance and your size and everything has a big impact on you being able to play that game. And so you have to be a certain age, and it has the same barrier where at a certain age you get too old to do it, and so on and so forth. But at the same time, you also have physical advantages. Like, I'm quite short. I would never be able to enter an NBA league, but if you were born tall, you have a distinct advantage to doing that. I think in gaming or in the digital space in general, there's a lot less of that. But that being said, maybe general intelligence is kind of your metric there. But I think it gets interesting because not all games are built equal. So now you have games that fit lots of different sorts of people. There might be games that women just maybe not are necessarily drawn to, but they just have this natural inclination to be better at it because of whatever their biology, brain chemistry, whatever you want to say. And then at the other end of the spectrum, you have things like chess. Chess is a pretty big sport in itself, and you would liken that to strategy games. And I think a lot of chess players aren't necessarily super young. I think they're a little bit older because the experience you have in the game, the experience you had, and the time you've taken to learn it and the ins and outs all play a factor in how good you are at it. And I think that there will be games, strategy games like that, where being a bit older is going to play a big advantage and a big role in that. So there's so much more diversity in the esports scene.
Great points. I wanted to roll back to a game that you've been following closely, and you know more than just most of the people out there because you've kept so closely on it. In fact, you've been on one of their council members making some important decisions with it, which is Illuvium. How do you are you happy with the pace of development there? What are you liking? What are you not liking?
The pace of development, I can't really speak for the team. Like, look, I think there have been a lot of delays and a lot of missed deadlines and things in the past. I think we're on a much better pace now. It's really easy to pick out the faults, but sometimes you go like, oh, this isn't out and this isn't out and this isn't out. They've got 3 working betas you can currently play pretty much now, right? And I think what's interesting is all 3 of them individually are all still the best crypto games that exist in Web3 right now. So looking at the good things is something that's really easy to forget. So there's definitely that element of it. I think the pace of development's okay. Hope we should be getting Illuvium 0 Season 1 and Illuvium Overworld Private Beta 2 this month. And Illuvium Private Beta 2 will have all 3 regions. Now, they won't be fully polished. They should be pretty solid though. But there's only 3 regions coming out with the full launch of the game. So realistically, with Illuvium 0 Season 1, which doesn't really need anything before the full launch, all 3 regions and like 90% of the alluvials, the other 10%, which aren't far away, all being complete, right? And then you just have PvP, which I've seen them working on behind the scenes. They're doing some pretty good work, and we'll see that in the next 4 to 6 weeks. I'm thinking we've got a pretty bright future ahead of us. And towards the end of 2023, I definitely think it's possible we launch this game and get it out for everyone to play with NFTs, blockchain, interoperable blockchain gaming, land, fuel revenues, all the rest of it. I definitely think it's possible to get it out there. They're progressing really, really well. I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm excited too. Now, the community voting is happening coming up soon for the new council members. And are you choosing to run for that?
Yeah, I'll be running for the marketing sub-council.
Awesome. So for those interested, what do they need to vote? They have to own some ILV, right?
They have to own staked ILV. So your ILV has to be staked. The length you stake for doesn't actually matter. So you could stake for 1 month or 12 months and you'll have the exact same voting power. And yeah, you just have to have staked ILV, and then you'll be able to go on the governance snapshots and things. I'll be making lots of tutorials and things for just in general. I'm not going to be plugging myself on those tutorials, obviously. And yeah, it'll just be as easy as going on Snapshot. You'll find the links in the Illuvium Discord. That'll be the easiest way. I'm hoping the links will also be on Twitter and things like that. If not, I'll be pushing for it. And then, yeah, you just click on those links and vote for who you want. We are adding weighted voting, or that should be going to vote soon, where basically you'll be able to split up your votes. So, for example, if I was a candidate and then you were also a candidate, you would be able to say, vote 80% of your voting power towards you and 20% of your voting power towards me. So you'll be able to do that weighted voting quite easily. And it'll give a lot more freedom to the voters, for sure.
That's cool. So you can vote for several of the people you like, so you don't have to pick just one. Nice. And when does the voting kick off for that?
May 13, I think. I need to bring it up again, but it's very soon. It's in like a week, yeah.
Perfect. Great. So now, how do you think you've put a lot of time and effort into Illuvium? Is it coming together like you hoped it would?
Yeah. I think they're taking a lot of community feedback really, really quickly. And although it's harmed the project a little bit in terms of scope creep, they've definitely got it under reins. But sometimes you just have to do what you've got to do, right? Like, let's use a recent example. Recently, we got the Overworld private beta. Now, it was only in December, which seems like a long time ago now, but it really isn't. We got it in December, so we got to play in the Overworld. Lots of feedback came from that. Most of it negative, okay? Now, there was a lot of positive, and maybe it's because a lot of the positive things that we had to say, we had already seen from leaks and things like that. But actually getting your hands on the game is a very different experience. A lot of the sentiment was around it being boring, monotonous, kind of empty, and things like that. And the team took that to heart really fast. Now, there's a lot of things that weren't in that beta that would actually help a lot of these things. So there's that as well. But one of the key things is there's going to be adding 2 features, hopefully before the game launches. Now, there are other features they could add, but that would have to be afterwards. So they're managing the scope as much as they can. The first one of these is plants that attack you. I don't know why they chose plants. I think because they stay in the one spot, so you don't have to figure out all the logistics of them moving around. At that point, you might as well add alluvials into the game. That's actually one of the last steps to get alluvials in there. But the plants will attack you, which will definitely make you engage with the game a lot more. But it's hard because this is supposed to appeal to people that don't want to be really good at action games. The entire genre is a little bit more focused towards strategy gamers rather than action gamers. So managing that expectation is really important. But that's the first one, is that plants will attack you, and that's going to make it a lot more engaging really quickly. I expect that to bump up the enjoyment of the game 200%, right? It's a pretty big shift. And the other thing is the new overload mechanic that we're going to get to test in this next beta. And what that means is when you get to 80% of the consumption of your energy, the entire zone or the entire region starts collapsing in on itself. And so you've got to race against the clock to get that last 20% of juice out. Now, there will be casual and competitive game modes where you do or don't have this mechanic, and all those sorts of options will be implemented, again, to benefit those more casual gamers. But yeah, I mean, they're taking all the feedback to heart, and it will draw out the development of the game a little bit. Now, I can't give you the specifics, and maybe it hasn't drawn out the duration for building the game. You have to assume it did, even at least a tiny bit. But all we know is these 2 changes are going to make the game way, way better when it does come out. And I'm all for delaying for things that I feel are important as these things. I think the game designers, developers, the studio in general is doing a really good job of funneling through that and figuring out what needs to change to make this the best game in Web3. Because pretty graphics aren't going to cut it. Gameplay is going to be really important. The loop's already pretty great. The IP is perfect. The IP is what we need. No one else is going to be able to match that, okay? The graphics, obviously, no one else is going to be able to match that either. The gameplay is definitely lacking in some areas. And until we see PvP, it's hard to say otherwise. But the competitive, social, player versus player element is definitely going to add longevity So we can't say that the overworld being boring is necessarily a bad thing. But yeah, I think the team is doing a really good job in making sure that it's a great gameplay experience.
One of the things I really like that they've done, because the gameplay, having played the private beta on the overworld, is somewhat boring, right? You're running around, you're trying to find the alluvial orb so that you can go in and you can battle the alluvials, and you're running around quite a bit, and like it becomes very monotonous. You know, you get so much energy per day, and that's okay. Like, what I think draws people to it is the collectability. Secondly, it's really cool how they integrated the use of the land. So the Alluvium Zero is what produces the energy or the different fuels required for the overworld in order to cure your shards or to travel or to upgrade your weapons and stuff. And the integration between those two is brilliant. And then the integration with the alluvials you capture, you get to take over to the battle arena, or you can just buy them. I think the integration between the three games is amazing, right? And some people won't ever play Overworld, or they'll play it a little bit and they're like, and they'll just buy the alluvials that they want to battle with. Some people will just play Alluvium Zero and they have fun and they buy some land and they just make some money from their land and they sell it. And that's cool. And some people will play Overworld all the time. They'll buy the fuel and they'll play Overworld, and maybe they sell some of the alluvials they capture and like just play that loop. So it allows for specialization, allows for integration among three different games, and that's a lot of fun and revolutionary, right? Because name me a game that has something like that right now.
I don't think there is one. And just on the Alluvium Zero front, I've been playing Alluvium Zero quite a bit. I came off a little bit because I knew it was going to get reset soon, so it kind of hampers your motivation when it's going to get reset soon, right?
Yeah.
But I firmly believe at the moment, including the other betas, that Alluvium Zero is the single best Web3 game that exists right now. The core gameplay loop is so compelling. And I always thought it was going to be. I was one of those people that was telling people that Alluvium Zero is going to blow their minds, and they weren't believing me. It was actually really amusing to me. But Alluvium Zero is really compelling. Now, what's interesting is it's got the core gameplay loop, and it's kind of got a start and a finish line. Now, especially in mobile gaming, you can't have a finish line. That's a bad idea. And that's why social elements are really important. So the generation of fuel and putting that into your overworld game or your wallet or whatever is a really key aspect to getting rid of that finish line. But outside of that, they're going to add some sort of PvP element inside Alluvium Zero eventually. And the graphics, the gameplay, and some of the unique elements it brings to city builder gameplay, I am very excited for the future of Alluvium Zero in particular. I think it's going to be one of the biggest games in Web3, even including the other Alluvium games. I think Alluvium Zero is going to take the world by storm in its own right, and I'm very excited for it.
How far away do you think they are? What version where they're going to allow you to merge, right? So if you have 4 pieces of land together, that you can actually operate them as one bigger piece of land, because they talked about, some of the buildings in the future will be so big, you need multiple pieces to be able to fit them on it. Well, that's only going to work if you can then piece together a piece of land and put it into one so that you see that on one screen.
I think if I had to think of it from a technical perspective, the numbers side of things is really not that hard. If you build a mega city, combine all your storages, combine all your things, all right? But the mega city will feel really, really stupid if you don't have a visual representation. And a lot of the work is going to go into that, as well as the balancing. You don't want mega cities to make owning a regular plot irrelevant, okay? Now, obviously, they need to have a lot of advantages in their own right, but if you make owning other plots of land really shit, then that's going to be a bad gameplay experience for a lot of people, right? So there's that element of it, but the visual element's really important. They've got all the boards for every individual plot on every individual region and so on and so forth. You need to make a 4x4 and a 3x3 board to put that on. So there's a lot of artwork that goes into that. There's a lot of graphics and things, and making sure it doesn't bug out and break and things like that as well. And then you've got the way the buildings work and how they integrate with it, and then the amount you can zoom out and zoom in, which they've been trying to fix up recently. So I don't know how far the technical limitations go. I do know that once Alluvium Zero is in season 1 and they got all the things that all the features ready for everything for it to be ready for the public beta launch. They need to spend a lot of their time getting everything else ready for Illuvium. I think Megacities definitely aren't going to happen till after public beta, but more importantly, I don't know if the dev work is necessarily going to go into it until after public beta. There's a very clear sentiment, not just in the community, but from within the team now as well, that getting this game to launch is pretty much top priority. And if you're spending time on things like Megacities, it's going to be a lot slower. But once that's done, I mean, once revenue's coming in, you have the potential to be able to scale the studio, add more members, add more people to all these teams, and then development goes even faster anyway. So it's just one of those compromises, right?
Yeah. In fairness, there is one game out there that is integrating multiple games. I don't know if you've followed it. I followed it closely because I actually helped them design some aspects of it, and it's called Litcraft. And they just released 4.0 version of it, right? So you can play all these games within it, and these games are necessary to earn different items. And so like kind of like Illuvium's got 3 games. So they took very popular games out there and made their own version of them. And each game produces different things that are necessary for businesses and other things to have some different components. They actually have taken the idea of integrating different games together, and certain items are produced by certain games so that there can be specialization, so that somebody who just likes to play the merge game can play that and then sell the items because they don't like any of the other games, so they just play that and they sell the items from it. One of the big surprises to me is, because they didn't advertise how big this upgrade was going to be, was the land, because there is land ownership in it.
Oh, cool.
And you can actually, just like Minecraft, and what's the other one that's like it, where you can build like a castle, or you can build a building and a store on it, and then you can have your storefront reflected on your land piece that's, say, downtown. And so you build it in a builder like this, and then you have that reflected there, or you can build stores and sell them to somebody else. I thought that's really, really interesting. So this is the first release of that part of it. I don't know what I'm doing, so I don't even know how to build. They haven't released a tutorial on it that I've seen. I'm sure there's some community members who have figured it out. I did see, I did a video call with this CEO to get updated about 3 weeks ago, and he showed me that this was coming, and he had a really cool built house and everything with a basement. And I thought, that's awesome. I have to get in there and try it. And then I got in here, and I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what buttons to use. But like, there's a horse running around in the background here. Anyway,
it's very cute.
Fascinating to see what's
within the browser.
Yeah. No, it's within its own. So if you download the game and everything, it opens up, and I've got it full screen here, so it opens up like normal size. I've got really big monitors, and so I took it and made it full screen. But they're another game that's kind of taken the games integrating together to higher levels. They're going much more with what they're doing right now. They're going more along the lines of the simple mobile friendly games, so that a lot of this stuff is all doable on mobile. They will release some other stuff that will probably be more gamer focused, but yeah, cool job that they've done. I thought it was worth mentioning, as we were talking about games integrating with other games and specialization. Like in Illuvium, there will be some people that just play Illuvium 0 and they sell the fuel, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's a game in its own right, and I really appreciate that Illuvium has done that. They didn't need to. They could have just done like, okay, you own land and you generate fuel from it. Done. Okay, move on to the next thing. But no, they made it an actual game with a gameplay loop. And I think why that makes it so compelling is because you're forced to play the game. You either, one, need to hire someone to play it for you, or two, if you don't play it, then everyone else is going to be generating more money from their land. So I like that it forces you to kind of turn it into an actual business instead of just generating passive income, which is what the ILV token already does, right? So I guess that's the difference there is if they didn't have the ILV token, then maybe you can use this as your investor tool, but they already had that. So now we add a new game into the ecosystem instead.
Yeah, and on this, you have to then, but this introduces the scholarship idea that Axie did, right? What if you lend your land to someone else, you give them the login, and they actually go in and harvest the resources every day, and then in return, you pay them a portion of, some kind of deal, like you either pay them, for each plot of land and harvesting the resources and maintaining it and upgrading it, or you pay them a percentage of revenues from it. So that once again, you have a business model within a business model, kind of what made Axie Infinity great. And some of it was clearly planned with Axie Infinity. I wonder if some of it was just kind of accidentally done. This whole idea of scholarships, right? Where somebody had a team and then, oh, well, why don't you just hire other people to run the teams for you? And that way they grind it out and you pay them 40% of the Smooth Love Potion or the value of the Smooth Love Potion that they earn every day. And that whole idea came about. I wonder if part of that was by accident, but a fortunate accident, because then it spawned this idea. And that's part of what took Axie to such great heights, because the amount of business revenue that flowed in of people buying Axies for teams to then manage got huge. But then they found out that Axie, the downside of Axie is it's so very one-dimensional, right? It's just earn Smooth Love Potion. You earn more if you win, and you earn a little bit if you lose. You have so much energy per day, and that's all that can happen there, right? And the Smooth Love Potion is necessary for breeding. Why do you need more Axies? Well, you need more Axies because if other players want to play, they have to buy some Axies to come in and play. And the gameplay only works as long as people are buying more Axies, because you have one person is buying multiple teams, or you have new people coming in entirely. But if the game's not growing, well, then new Axies aren't needed at all, and the gameplay loop fails.
Yeah, pretty much. And the game has trouble growing if you're pricing out people like me who still want to play Web3 games.
Yeah, so some of the basic games, one of the other ones that really did well was Peg Axie, which I didn't get into, right? Because the horse, you don't have much control, and you can buy a horse with good stats, but you pay $10,000, and if you race it every day, you'll make some of that back. It just was too gimmicky, not enough skill or something else needed. So to me, it was the yield farming stuff in early DeFi, where you just plug it in, you hope you make enough from the yield farming to recover your initial investment, and may work out, may not work out. And that's kind of what Peg Axie reminded me of, just a more visual form of it.
Yeah, pretty much. That's pretty much what it was. I did forget to mention this, but my entry into crypto gaming was actually through Zed Run. So there's a major comedian duo in Australia, and they mentioned that they were getting into Zed Run. I'm like, what is this? This looks really interesting. And that was my first entry into crypto gaming. I actually really enjoyed Zed Run. I still to this day think it was a really fun experience. Now, I didn't make any money. I lost a lot of money on it. Well, not a lot, but I lost a bit of money on it. But I mean, that's the reality of it. I actually really enjoyed playing the game and my gameplay experience. Losing money or not, I genuinely paid for the entertainment value I got out of it. Now,
so it's kind of like regular horse racing.
Yeah, kind of like regular horse racing. But no, I actually really, really enjoyed it. And that's when I started really going down that crypto gaming rabbit hole. And probably the same reason I steered away from Peg Axie. I'm like, yeah, I played Zed Run. Zed Run did it way better than Peg Axie did. Now, I'm sure it'll probably do pretty well. They've got really good marketing behind them, but it's not going to last. Zed Run is probably still doing okay. I never really saw them as lasting because their systems were a little bit interesting. But they were one of the less Ponzi games out there. I think it had a unique problem. It had a unique problem where it was real yield, where people lost money so other people gained money. So it wasn't a Ponzi scheme, but the amount you earned from that was really little. And the problem you had was that everyone was making money on breeding, so it meant that the ROI had a huge disparity. The ROI on breeding was really high because everyone was making money on it, but that meant the ROI from actually racing, which was the least Ponzi side of things, made pretty much nothing, like pennies on the dollar, right? So what this meant is that everyone was breeding to make the money there. Once that market crashed, the entire game kind of crashed in its own right. But the problem is that once that market crashed, then maybe you can make a bit of money racing. But all the people that were super into it just left anyway. So there wasn't really anything to be made, and the gameplay experience started to take a hit. That's one of the other problems we're facing in Web3 at the moment is matchmaking. If it's hard to find other players in the games, then you can't play them. It's awful. It's the same reason I don't play Dead Drop. I actually really love the gameplay loop of Dead Drop, but when you log on to try and play the game, you end up in a game with like 6 people. And it's like, well, this is fucking shit experience. This is fucking awful. You need to be able to fix that, and you can't. I mean, it's not some switch you can flick. You need to get interest into your game and people playing it consistently. The only way to do that is with a really compelling gameplay loop, and or a lot of money.
Yeah, or what generally happens is money comes into the crypto market because interest goes high, and it goes through this parabolic spike, which gives some of these that have an interesting gameplay loop or an interestingly enough gameplay loop enough pool that would continue playing that to come in. So at some point it's like super hard because the servers are completely overloaded because so many new people want to play. But then as kind of crypto dies down and some of the interest fades, and then you have your core people that are playing it. Because that is one of the problems with anything, right? Is that if it doesn't have the network effects of enough people playing it, well, then it's not interesting to play. And so like you're disincentivized to play it, even though you like the gameplay loop. Why? Because there aren't enough other people playing it. And so it hasn't hit that network effect yet.
Well,
You have
had
to
the
have an
same
NFT
problem.
to play that one, right?
Which one again? Sorry.
Dead Drop.
Dead Drop. No, you could buy that little tower key thing for like $20, but that's probably a large part of that reason is people didn't want to pay $20 for the early access. And I think that was only a limited time sale, so anyone that didn't get it doesn't have it. I think that's one of the other core problems. But yeah, even some of my favorite Web 2 games have been crushed by this. Battlefront 2. I used to love playing Battlefront 2. It's still like I would play it every day if I could get servers. Now, in America, you have no problem. In Australia, you have lots of problems because when everyone left, they did not come back when they got rid of the loot boxes and all that sort of stuff. And yeah, the servers are completely dead. I have the same problem with Star Wars Squadrons. Once the hype for that died down, I got no servers and I've got no one I can play with, even though it's my favorite VR experience of all time, but it's my favorite, probably one of my favorite gaming. Both of them are probably my favorite gaming experiences of all time. Maybe I'm just such a Star Wars nerd that I feel like running around as a droid and saying Roger Roger is just the best Sunday ever for me. Or flying in an X-Wing and taking out a TIE fighter is just like the best day ever for me. That is when I'm having the most fun in gaming. I'm excited for Illuvium to do a lot of that sort of stuff as well. I think, but maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's the IP needs to be solid. Once the Illuvium IP is big, it's going to be a big deal for a lot of people, including myself, and I'm hoping many younger generations as well.
They have spent the time on the Illuvium IP that it's got a chance to go really, really big so that people love these characters, right? Because it's the Pokemon game we all wanted, but Pokemon wouldn't build, right?
Well, Pokemon didn't become big from the game. The game, I believe, actually did come out very shortly before the anime, but the anime is what made Pokemon exist. The anime is still the reason Pokemon exists. The games now push the genre forward, where they introduce all the new characters and things like that. But realistically, they wouldn't really need to. They could just add them all in using the anime. But linking all these different media franchises together is what makes Pokemon the largest media franchise in the world. You link the game, the merch, and the media together, and you've got something insane. I mean, it's the same reason Cyberpunk came back from death. Cyberpunk released, obviously, in a state that not many people were a fan of.
Right.
But when that Netflix show came in, a very large chunk of the player base returned to that game. And it's about building that IP. That's what people fall in love with. That's why people get involved with some of these larger titles, is the IP. And I think Illuvium, if nothing else, is building an IP that has the ability to last a long time. Not many other people are doing that in Web 2 and Web 3.
So, what point are they going to build this cartoon series for it?
Andrew's been talking about it for a while, so it's definitely on their radar. I believe Aaron might have even written a basic script already and things like that. They're gonna, again, we're gonna get the game to launch, but in theory, once revenue's coming in, you've got the ability to do so much, and that's actually my biggest takeaway from Axie is that making a lot of money doesn't make a good team. Okay, Axie made billions of dollars and they did absolutely nothing. I don't know what they were doing in their ivory tower. They did nothing. But Illuvium, I'm hoping is going to be different now. I'm hoping, obviously, I have no guarantees for you. But from what I can tell from the team, and I believe in them, I think they're going to make a real difference in not just Web3, but in the world.
I like the people behind it, right? As an investor, one of the things I look at is who are the people behind it. And when I spoke with Kieran Warwick forever ago for the first time, this was before they had released the land. In fact, I asked him about land. He said, well, we may do land. I'm getting a lot of pressure to do land, but we won't do land unless we can give it serious utility where there's real value for the people. We're not just going to sell a bunch of land to sell a bunch of land, raise a bunch of money, and then not do something that makes sense with it. And so when they did come out with their proposal, I was like, he delivered on exactly what he said he'd do. But in that interview, I was like, this guy is solid. And then he's got two other brothers working with him that are solid people, right? So the core team behind them are amazing.
And the fourth brother's the founder of Synthetics.
Yeah, right. I know, right? With all the best connections you could have. And I remember Synthetics when it was super cheap and it was only buyable on Uniswap. Like there were some other exchanges it was on that I didn't have access to. So I was like, I really should buy some of that. It was super cheap. And then it went like 100x from there. And I was like, should have, would have, could have, but didn't. One of everyone in crypto, if you've been here for 4 or 5 years, you're going to have a number of stories like that.
Yeah, so, yes, I've got plenty of my own. I've got plenty of my own, believe me. I bought Cardano at like 1/5 of a cent and then sold it at 3/5 of a cent. You know what I mean? Like,
oh yeah. Yeah, if we all had like hindsight is 2020, if we could all just see the future, even by a couple months, gosh, we'd be super rich. Or just a few of us could do it. I guess if we could all do it, then it'd be, yeah, couldn't capture any value there. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. And if you haven't already, follow Scoriox's channel. That's spelled with a C, SCIORIOX. I'll put a link to it in the description below, so you can just click on it, go to it, and follow him. And the votes are coming up soon. I've talked to Scoriox a bunch of times leading into some big decisions made before, and I love the amount of thoughtfulness and time he puts into his decisions on the council. He totally gets my vote for that, and I trust him with making good decisions for the future of the game. And he definitely has a thoughtful, analytical mind, so that he's trying to look out for the benefit of the token holders, for those that are playing the game, and for the landowners, making good decisions that really move it forward. It's important because, I mean, the people that make those decisions, it does impact the direction of the game.
Yeah, definitely. There's been a lot of hard decisions we've even had to make this epoch, and Governance V2 is coming out with the next epoch, so that's going to shake things up even more. But I'm excited to see where it goes, and I think whoever is on the council is going to do the best job for the DAO. I feel like I have a lot of faith in the community and their ability to elect in the right people. I think they do a really, really good job, and I think they're really, really smart. And I can't wait to see who's on the next council.
Awesome. Thanks, Scoriox.
No problem.
Hey, those of you who are here, I appreciate you taking the time to really absorb some of this. The interview, over an hour and 15 minutes, hour and 18 minutes so far. The reason we spend so much time here is because this is where a bunch of money is going to be made through blockchain gaming. I'm very interested as an investor. I put a lot of my focus into gaming the last number of months because I think it's going to be one of the biggest areas of growth within crypto. So it deserves a lot of my attention. So I created a second channel focused on live streaming some gaming, playing some gaming. If you haven't followed that, the link for that is below as well. It's a new channel, and I'll be streaming a lot of the blockchain games, probably some traditional games like Call of Duty or other games, just showing you what's going on, because I think some of this is going to happen when blockchain gaming, the way it changes gaming, in the future, it'll just be called gaming, even though a lot of these games will be on the blockchain, because it doesn't need the term blockchain gaming. What we're interested in the blockchain behind it is the asset ownership behind it. That's what blockchain enables and upgrades games tremendously when you have true asset ownership. It also upgrades the ability of game makers to make massive revenues if, like Axie Infinity, they just take a sliver as people exchange the value and just create a situation where people can exchange the value and make value, and they can still make tons of revenue as other people are making money within the games, instead of the current revenue models where they sell loot boxes, but you can't really trade those, the items you get from them, to other people. You know, we're all kind of tired of that you spend like $200 over time on a game and you don't really own any of that. You can't trade it. Well, I think blockchain is going to bring gaming way far forward. And I suspect that there will be some more projects where the value goes 3,000x. And so that's what I'm looking for, is which ones might do 100x, which ones might do even more than that. And I'm looking for those because I'm an investor myself. Yes, I'm a gamer too, but I'm an investor first. And the investor side of me is the one that is super interested in what's happening with gaming. Thanks so much for joining me, and I will see you all later. This wrap, you know what this is about, reinforcing the principles I share on this channel about how to make good money over time through crypto investing.
Came into the space chasing all of the games, chasing the pumps and all of the hype trains. But like in life, buy before you could. Was told to buy when it was pouring like a rainmaker should. Buy when it's down, don't chase the boats that I miss. Cause I always make the time in mind. I stick the one out cause I'm patient like that, and I'll wait for the right time. I sell when it's high, I buy when it's low. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm just a rainmaker running the show. Calculated investments, I don't lead with my heart. The principles are simple, they're leaving a mark. Buy when it's boring, just gotta be smart. I sell when it's hype, like all the channels they pump it. That's when I was selling a parabolic and dump it. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm a rainmaker, making my own start. I'm with the future, learning the past. Makes the time fly by, years going so fast. The game plan is mine, I'll own it now. When I reach the top, haters asking me how. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love, and I follow what I learn, not relying on luck. Time is never better, the time like the present. This next 5 years is a gift and it's feeling like heaven. I'm committed to learn, to study and to know that nothing comes easy, but with knowledge the game show. Sticking out this wrong could soon become a bear market. Learning and growing, and when it's slow would be the target. They say it's come out, Bitcoin is dead. The massive decreases can get to your head. Sticking around, the time is better. I'm strong like that, I'll let the others be fretters. 2 years time, the ball will bring back the gains. That makes it worth the effort, cause here comes the rain. So let's go rainmakers, let's make it all happen. Let go of the hate, let the haters be cracking. I'm here for 5 years, let's do this together. The time is right, the time could be better. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm a rainmaker, making my own start. I'm with the future, learning the past. Makes the time fly by, years going so fast. The game plan is mine, I'll own it now. When I reach the top, haters asking me how. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love, and I follow what I learn, not relying on luck. Haters be hating, the time to slow down. Addressing what they say when I'm wearing my crown. They're chasing green candles like someone who was new. I got a vision that was bigger, helping me to push through. I'm still human and sometimes it is rough, and that's what makes me special, simply I stay tough. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love, and I follow what I learn, not relying on luck.